What's up, motivators? It's Kevin. Welcome back to Pure BullFit. Now, first I want to apologize. I know I'm seated, and as Jeff says, exercises are simply more athletic when you're standing. But since this is an exercise in futility, probably, I'm going to go ahead and take it sitting down. No, my back is killing me. I have hard days, and on those hard days, I typically don't record. I like to be animated, stand up, and move around. But having a rough day where I can barely stand up straight and get around is strangely apropos to the topic I want to talk about. So a story came to my attention yesterday that's probably been circulating for about a week, but yesterday is when I saw it through Alan Roberts' video, that Dickinson University was, guilted into taking down some signs that encouraged people to use the elevator. And not only were people calling it fat shaming and hate speech, but they leveraged the experience of people with disabilities, and particularly invisible disabilities, as justification for why these needed to be taken down and why they were grossly inappropriate. Now, as a person who, when you look at me walking down the street, you don't associate me with being disabled, I felt particularly angered that people who weren't suffering significant debilitating injuries and disabilities were leveraging people like me to their ends, and I found it incredibly upsetting. So I know that Alan Roberts put out a video on this and he's already talked about it, but I want to share my perspective because I'm pissed. I read this story yesterday and I'm still pissed. I was pissed last night, I was pissed when I woke up this morning, and it's just something I feel like I want to talk about. So we're going to have an informal conversation, not my usual walking back and forth and making jokes and the whole 9 yards. This is just more like a heartfelt conversation on the topic. So stick with me. I feel like I've got some light to shed that hasn't been covered already. So what you have on screen here is the sign in question. It simply encourages people, if they are able, to utilize the stairs and shares the benefits if they choose to do so. But this is apparently what's got everybody in such a tither. Now, this particular story is being circulated wildly and widely by certain types of news outlets that I don't particularly like to associate with, so I'm only going to go off the information that's in the Dickinsonian. And I have that article linked below so that you can read it for yourself and see that I'm not cherry picking or trying to frame this in a certain way so that I can become offended, much like I feel the individuals who objected to the sign were when they read the sign. So the article starts off with a 21-year-old sophomore who saw the sign and felt personally attacked by it somehow. And I'm not trying to shame her, I just disagree with her intensely. And the young gentleman that shows up later in the article says some particularly troubling things, but I'm just going to read it right off the article here. She noticed she started taking classes on the 3rd floor and used the elevator. I began to feel guilty every time I took the elevator, Cower said. She explained that taking the stairs caused uncomfortable physical symptoms, including dizziness and loss of breath. I started realizing that I shouldn't put my body through pain or stress when there is an elevator I could use. Okay, so nowhere in the article does she talk about having a particular personal issue or a disability. We can only assume that she is in such a deconditioned state that taking 3 flights of stairs leaves her winded and dizzy. Now that is a problem. But it's a problem with her lifestyle and the way that she's chosen to take care of her body that 3 flights of stairs winds her to the point where she is nauseated and dizzy. So let's take a look at the sign. Is there anything compulsory in there? Is there anything that is particularly shaming? It literally starts with, if you are able. Now, I want to point out that most people who I've seen that are objecting to what she had to say are making the assumption that she is overweight or obese. And while that very well may be the case, there are lots of skinny people out there, or skinny fat people, who are just so deconditioned that 3 sets of stairs kicks their ass. That's a problem in and of itself. So I'm not going to make any assumptions about her size or call her fat or use it to insult her. I'm telling you that she has a significant health issue if 3 flights of stairs make her so dizzy and so nauseous that she objects to the sign that just encourages people to do something healthy. James Van Cuylenburg here, a 22-year-old, goes on to say things that I find actively troubling. As you'll see on screen here, he says that these signs were effectively fat shaming and promoting weight loss as if it were healthy. As if it were healthy. Of course it's healthy. Look, we've got a problem when people who are going to college, presumably, ostensibly to get an education, can with such confidence say things like, hey, whoa, losing weight and exercise, you can't just pass that off as healthy. This is a firmly held opinion of his because he goes on to say this ridiculousness. It had a negative impact on campus to have a series of signs that glorified a dangerous narrative that feeds into eating disorders. If you are able, taking the stairs does not feed into eating disorders. Moving the goalpost to such a point where you suggest something healthy that someone could do to take better care of themselves as a dangerous narrative, as an attack on who they are, is indicative of your head being so far up your ass you could check your own tonsils. Encouraging people to healthy activity is not shaming. It is certainly not feeding into a dangerous narrative that leads to eating disorders. That's fucking bullshit, and I'm really pissed off about it, but it's not the thing that I am angriest most about. This activity, these signs, were compared to hate speech. Look, this is probably going to hurt some people's feelings, and if you want to know my particular stances on fat shaming, its reality, and the damage that it does, go ahead and watch my other video on healthy at any size. But I'm going to say this very plainly. Fat shaming sucks, and it is real, and it does real damage, but it is not hate speech. Putting yourself, calling yourself a person of size, and putting yourself on the same level, on the same field as a person of color is disingenuous and moving the goalpost to such a point that your argument loses its merit. A person who is born a person of color can't change their situation or the institutional disadvantages that they have by virtue of being born, the color, race, or ethnicity that they are. Being a person of size for 99% of people out there who don't have a medical condition, who don't have an exacerbating circumstance or a legitimate disability, that is something that can be affected and changed. And calling yourself a victim of a hate crime because someone with a sign that encourages you to do physical activity is personally shaming towards you, is not taking accountability for your own actions or how you've ended up in the place that you are. I acknowledge that there are societal factors that lead into our country being one of the largest, most overweight on earth. We have a culture of excess, and that is absolutely true. But conflating actual, real societal problems like hate speech with feeling bad because a sign encourages you to exercise is woefully inappropriate. It's almost as inappropriate as leveraging the disabilities of others so that you don't have to look at that sign anymore, and that is exactly what the next step was. After comparing all of this to hate speech, they went on to say how unfair it is to people who have suffered injuries, who are permanently disabled, or who are mobility impaired. People like me. I read that sign and I didn't get offended. I thought it was a good idea. I don't speak for all people with mobility issues, but I do speak for myself when I say you don't get to take the pain that I deal with every day and use it to your own personal end so that you can virtue signal and white knight into this situation. Yeah, now I say virtue signaling and white knight as somebody who leans left pretty damn hard. Look, I understand that they had the best of intentions when they went into this, but some damaging things have come out of it. First, stop conflating presumed fat shaming with hate speech. They don't belong on the same level. Secondly, while fat shaming is wrong, passively encouraging people to do exercise, which is actually healthy for them, is not fat shaming. Third, presenting exercise and being more healthy and weight loss as if it were an attack on people's good health, presuming that it in and of itself is unhealthy and leads to eating disorders, is bullshit, and it's a narrative that needs to be squashed ruthlessly under the boot of logic, reason, and science. And if you get nothing else from this, just consider this one thought. Other people's experiences, the things that they go through, aren't yours to use to your personal ends. Whether or not that person is a vet and you're telling other people they have to stand or kneel for the national anthem. Whether or not you're offended by a sign and want it taken down, so you decide you're going to use disabled person's experiences, presume what they are, what they feel guilty about, ask one person, get immediate bias confirmation, and then make a decision based on it. Don't do those things. And when you turn such a small thing into such a big deal, you offer the other side of the conversation or the argument easy ammunition to diffuse, demean, and dismiss all of your legitimate arguments about big topics that actually matter. This sign was not one of them. Nobody in that college was the victim of fat shaming. They were encouraged to be a little healthier. Some people found that personally offensive. Those people need to do some introspection. Now, this can be a contentious issue, and I understand that there is room in what I've said to be offended. And if you've got questions, need clarification, or want to talk to me about something that I have expressed in this video, I encourage you to reach out and do so in the comments, by messenger, give me a call, whatever. I promise, however angry I am at the moment, I'm not going to roast you in my comment section unless you go out of your way to be a dickhead. And if you really want to go the dickhead route, you're honestly just giving me ammunition for a Mean Tweets episode later, so you do you. Alright guys, that's my rant. May have been ill-advised, some folks might have been offended, but I needed to get that off my chest. We're going to return in the next video to our regularly scheduled program of disseminating actionable information. Try not to do too many videos like this because I don't like to spend all that much time pissed off. But hopefully somewhere somebody got some value out of it, and at least that's what I'm going to tell myself. Alright, thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next video.
Do you want to know